Good morning, everyone. I'm Coni Meyers, and I have my two lovely friends, Tracey Hawkins and Lori Namazi, with me today. Happy National Safety Month, and we're going to be talking about psychological safety as well as how to keep yourself have a low risk. Welcome, Lori. How are you this morning?
I'm great. Thank you. So good to see you, ladies.
And Tracey, I think you have a lot to tell us about this morning, so why don't you just lead us off?
Okay, I am. And why am I excited? I'm excited. It's a new topic for me, and today I'm here in Kansas City, Missouri, and the sun is out. We're going to get up to the 80s, so I have even more reason to be happy. But as you said, Connie, June is National Safety Month, and safety is my business. And I want to say a couple of months or so ago, I got an opportunity to present on psychological safety. And I will have to admit, at the time, I didn't have a true understanding of what that was. So my goal was to learn anything and everything that I could about psychological safety. So the definition of psychological safety is the ability to be able to speak your mind, to say your thoughts and feelings and concerns without worrying about retribution, retaliation, and basically being targeted. And that is so very basic, but it's real. So what really impressed me is when they studied Google as an organization, they did a big survey. And the question was, what is it that makes a great team? What's the difference between an okay team and a great team? And the bottom line was psychological safety. So my challenge, and I had an opportunity this week to kick Safety Month off as a keynote speaker for a Department of Transportation, is how does psychological safety show itself in their organization? Now, keep in mind that that's a dangerous job. Field work is a very dangerous job. We started the month off talking to the management, and my job was first and foremost, like Lori said, most people don't really know what psychological safety is. I didn't know what it was. So I had to explain to the management of the Department of Transportation why psychological safety was so important for keeping their organization safe. So let me tell you in a nutshell what I told them. The very essence of psychological safety is if you see something, say something. You should feel comfortable enough to speak out. If you see something that may not be quite right, that's not done right, something that may be dangerous or something that's killing the morale of a workplace, you need to feel comfortable enough going to your leadership saying, this is a problem. And you need to feel comfortable enough to know that you are not going to be targeted, retaliated against, and that there won't be retribution for speaking out. It's the freedom to speak. And that is so powerful when you think about it. So the way I was able to tie it in is I was able to tell them, your staff should feel comfortable. If they see something in the field, if an employee is not using the proper PPE, if they don't have the proper safety equipment, if they're taking shortcuts on certain things that they're doing, certain procedures, and they're taking the shortcut, they're not doing it the safe way, your people should feel comfortable enough to come to you and say, this is what's going on. And along those lines, that's going to keep your business safe, because you know something's right now. Every business has a problem, whether they know it or not. There are things happening that are dangerous, that are destructive to the business, but the employees are too afraid to speak out and to say anything. And that's a problem. So if your people feel that they can come to you and talk to you about what they see, that's already a win. And you have to make them feel comfortable doing so. So that means you have to put procedures in place. There has to be a way for them to report something's going on. It could be a hotline. It could be a Dropbox, an anonymous Dropbox. Every meeting you should have a conversation. What's going on? Is anything happening that I need to know about? And another big component of psychological safety is failure is okay. They need to know if we make a mistake, if there's a failure, that it's not the end of the world. There won't be trouble, but it is okay as long as they know that you are going to learn from the failure. So it's not failure for failure's sake, but if there's something that went wrong, we're going to talk about it and we're going to learn from it. And then finally, I don't want to talk too much. One of the things that I had to explain to them is that the way that information is received is so very important. If an employee comes to you and said, there is a problem that we need to resolve, I told the management, I said to stop, pause, take a breath, says the girl who doesn't breathe between sentences, to stop for a moment, And the first thing out of your mouth should be, thank you for coming to me. So you're not going on and on about the problem. You're not quizzing them. You're not questioning them. You're not hitting the roof. You're saying, thank you for coming to me. And then secondly, recognize that it took a lot for them to come to you, and then talk calmly, talk about what their concerns, what their issues are, and then put a plan in motion to do something different. And just imagine the power of that. Someone who's afraid to approach their manager, and they go forward and say, this is what's going on, and then they kind of brace themselves. But instead of hearing all of this, they hear, thank you. Psychological safety is powerful, and I've decided that that's the direction. That's a new class, a leadership class that I am going to start offering, and I've already had some interest in doing it for other agencies. So that's true for real estate organizations. That's true for any kind of corporation, any organization. Your people need to feel comfortable talking about what's going on. That's going to help keep your environment safe, and it's going to boost morale.
Wow. That is amazing, Tracey. Thank you so much for explaining what psychological safety is. Lori, I think she's talked a lot about how you might be able to reduce your risk factors by understanding what psychological safety is. What's your comments on that?
Yeah, that was some pretty fascinating stuff, because when you look back at the evolution of management and then leadership, because we converted from management to leadership a couple of decades ago with Peter Drucker's teachings, it's really fascinating, because what you said is so fundamental, and yet it's often forgotten. And a good leader has that emotional intelligence to be able to establish that type of culture where people feel safe to go to their supervisor and discuss any issue. And some of the issues that you described are new issues for us. Having to deal with PPP is new for us, unless you're in like manufacturing, something very industrial where that's the norm. The rest of us in typical offices don't have to deal with that. So there's all these new issues that supervisors, leaders have to deal with. And when you look at all of the research, most people leave a company because of the culture. And it's usually because of their manager, their poor manager, who doesn't have that emotional intelligence to be able to establish a culture where people feel safe to talk. So I was really fascinated with that. And, we chatted ahead of time. Nobody is talking about this psychological safety. It's a new term I've never heard before. I have a master's degree in organizational leadership. I've never heard that term. And so this is new territory, yet it's rooted in those fundamentals that have been taught for decades. But the key is people still aren't getting it. And what was so important was that failure is okay. We have a new generation of employees who have been coddled during their childhood and told they can do anything, but they didn't have the experience of trying because they were protected from that failure. And then they get to the workplace and they have to figure out, how do I do my work when I don't know how to do it? How do I make a mistake and not get scolded? And no one's going to come with that safety net. So I think it directly ties into protecting your company. I mean, sure, a lot of what I talk about with office risk management are tangible risks, getting sued, things like that. But retention is so important, and your business is at risk when you have a lot of turnover. And you can have a lot of turnover when people just are not feeling good about where they work.
Oh man, that is so true. So,
Yep.
Well, I talk a lot about, and one of the things you said, Tracey, about saying thank you. Thank you goes so far. The other thing that I think is critically important, especially in a situation where somebody is bringing you something that might be causing a problem, is to be able to be a really good listener. I mean, that's the key to a really good leader, is to be able to sit down and listen and really hear what that person is saying. And not just what they're saying, but what is their body language telling you? What is everything about them? I mean, that's helps you to protect yourself and your employees and everybody else if you can read people's body language and see what's really going on. But being able to be a good listener. And I love what you said about failure, because you're right, Lori. I mean, we've got a young generation right now that's been told that they can do anything, which they can. The beautiful thing is they can. The bottom line is you don't get there just as an easy flow straight up. You're going to have what I call failure course corrections. In my Crystalline Moments book, I have a chapter about a young man who created the Dawn Wall, the only route, the rock climbing route up the Dawn Wall. And when he stayed with me for 2 years in a row for a month while he was working on this route. The Dawn Wall is in Yosemite, and it is a straight, flat piece of granite, for those of you who don't know. And he and his partner, Tom Caldwell, they actually created this route. It took him 7 years. And he would come, when he was staying here, he was talking about the fact that, you don't just look up and say, okay, that's the route. You don't look down and say, that's the route. You start the route, and then all of a sudden you find out that you can't go to the next notch. You need to put in the next spike. And so you fall, you have course corrections. And he says that's a metaphor for life. So I think being able to look at psychological safety in that manner and looking at it that, okay, you need to have, people are going to fall. We need to pick them up, bring them back up again. And that's, I'm sure, part of psychological safety is making sure that we're picking people up. If there is a problem, finding the problem. As a good leader, we need to be we need to be self-aware, but we also need to be very aware of everyone around us and how we can provide buy-in. Well, if there's a problem, then you're not going to have buy-in. And so you have to correct that problem and find a way to do it not in a threatening way. I think, the top-down management where you got to do this way is out the door. You've got to find ways to support everybody. And if it's a big problem that's affecting a lot of people, you're going to need to have some kind of a meeting or some kind of a get-together and really listen to what people are having to say. Why is the problem happening? What are the solutions to the problem? Maybe it's a solution that comes from the outside of the company to come in. Maybe it's something that can be done internally. It just kind of depends on what the problem is. But I think I had never heard the term either, Tracey, until you told me the other day. I was like, psychological safety. Wow. So I think what a powerful topic, and what a great thing to be talking about during National Safety Month.
Right. So, and then like you said, people, I think it was Lori, people know it, but they didn't know what to call it. So if you think about, when I look at examples, in order to I had to truly dive deep to wrap my head around it. So if you look at do you guys remember when the two 747s collided on the runway, killed over two Boeing 747s, and they killed over 500 people. The co-pilot knew that the pilot didn't have a good grasp on takeoff procedures. He didn't feel comfortable enough speaking up. And as a result of him not feeling psychological safety, over 500 people died. And then even you all remember the spaceship Challenger, the whole situation when it collapsed. So what I found is that an engineer diagnosed the problem, but he felt he was too far down on the NASA leadership management ladder to speak up. So he didn't feel safe enough to talk to those above him and say there was a problem. And as a result, all of the astronauts on board perished. So psychological safety is out there. We just didn't know what to call it. And when Google said psychological safety is the difference between a good team and a bad team, and Google is well respected in that space, people started listening, and they still don't know what to call it. But every single business organization has to deal with psychological safety in order to, like Lori said, impact their bottom line, to reduce their liability and the morale. That's important too. And the way I was able to tie it to safety is I'm saying if someone observes a dangerous behavior within your organization, whether it's a code or a procedure or equipment failure, they need to come to you. And then that could help keep your numbers lower, your accident numbers lower. So it's very real in organizations of all types, of all sizes. And I think saying it and getting a true understanding of it. And the bottom line is leadership. Leadership needs to make the environment comfortable. Hey, people, nothing's perfect. If you see something wrong, say something. You will not be retaliated against. I want to hear I don't know everything. And that's another key component, is to say, I don't know everything. I need your help. Help me figure this out. And that automatically makes it easier for them to talk to you. And a more open environment is a safer environment.
Oh, man.
Another area that is impacted financially is workers' compensation. When employees are seeing these situations, feeling that they can't go to their supervisor, it creates a lot of stress. It creates stress on their mind, stress on their body. Typically, the result will be a disciplinary action on an employee for poor performance, and the manager is not getting to the root of the issue. The issue is that employee is holding something within them, holding that secret because they're too afraid to share. Their performance is suffering, and what ends up happening is they go out on stress leave because they can't cope anymore and they don't want to be fired. And it takes a lot to resolve that. And a workers' comp claim can devastate a small company. Especially, you mentioned at the top of the conversation, the policies and procedures. I'm always talking about policies and procedures. When your insurance company is coming after you, they want to look at what have you done to avoid this issue, whatever the issue is, whatever insurance agency is involved. They're looking at what do you have in place that will protect the business. And beyond that, what communication and what training have you done to demonstrate that you are taking this seriously? You're showing your employees the right way to follow the company guidance. And if you don't have a policy and procedure on a variety of safety matters, that's one ding against you when the insurance says we don't want to pay out and here's why. And the other is if you don't have proper documentation of training and communication to your employees. So workers' comp can really wipe out a small business.
Well, I'd like to reiterate about morale because, let's face it, if you're going to be a successful company, you have to have buy-in from your employees, and you have to make them feel like they're safe. So just flipping that around and creating a real safety net, psychological safety net for people, what that's going to do to your company is it's going to grow your bottom line. It's not going to take away like it would if it was a comp claim. So I think just the benefits of having good procedures in place and good ways for your team and your employees to come and talk to you, I think is critically important. Tracey, why don't you go back over some of the things that you can do to have something in place that will help the employees feel safe?
Okay, first of all, there has to be a safety plan. You have to let your employees know, and every opportunity, that what you have to say is important. And my angle as the safety lady is safety. So that's where it shows up for me. So I tell management, leadership, that your employees need to know what to do if something's wrong. So that means, first of all, they know that you acknowledge something's going to be wrong. Secondly, they know the procedure. If there is a hotline, every conversation, every meeting should start with, here's the number to call to report if you see a problem. If there is another mechanism, whether it's a Dropbox or whatever the mechanism is, they need to know it. And then every single meeting, you need to talk about it. Does anyone see anything going on that could make our company, our organization safer or make it better? And they need to feel comfortable. And after a while, in the beginning, any organization, I worked for a couple of large companies before striking out on my own. I know that people sit around and this like, we'll never tell them. And everybody around the water cooler, everyone's having a conversation with everything wrong with the business, and the management never hears the message. So psychological safety is so important in getting a training program established. And Lori made an excellent point, is that if you're in trouble, you have to prove that you did something. And then this is where Coni, Lori, and I come into play. When I first met Coni, I was excited because in my programs, I talk a little bit about disaster preparedness, but what I recognized when I saw Coni is nobody knows it like Coni. Coni lives and breathes it. So if you have a disaster, you have a problem, and you have to go to the insurance company, can you imagine the power of being able to say, this lady, and then look at her credentials, is who helped us with our disaster preparedness plan. She's the one who helped us put a crisis plan in place. That helps lower your risk. And Lori, I talk about it on a regular basis. I even wrote about it. Lori's the one who comes in with an assessment. Now, this is what Lori does. Lori lives and breathes risk management. So she knows it. She knows how to be proactive. So if you have someone like her on your team, then how can you go wrong? So my whole deal is experts. I love experts. So what I'm telling management is to lean on experts and let your employees know that this is important enough for us to bring in experts. But you also need to speak up and you need to say something. If you see something, I can't say that enough. It needs to be safe enough to speak out. In this environment now, a lot of people are going back to the office, but some people are still working remotely. The key is to make sure those remote virtual workers feel like they're a part of the team. They see things, they know things, they still need to be comfortable enough to report what they see and what they know. So you also have to have activities to make sure they're part of the team. They need to be involved in meetings. And here's another thing that I talked about, that water cooler conversation is important. Even in a virtual world, have a virtual water cooler or break room. So imagine your employees working at home feeling disconnected, but they know things. So if you have a set time, it could be 15 minutes in the morning, 15 in the afternoon, this Zoom meeting room is open, pop in, say hi to people. So it's kind of like the same thing working around the water cooler. That keeps the conversation going, and management needs to make sure they're present. You can say, hey, what's going on? How are you doing? Just showing that you care is key. So leadership, bottom line is show that it's important, lean on expertise, and then make sure your employees know this is important to me, because culture starts at the top. If everybody up here thinks that it's important to be safe, everybody down below knows it's okay to talk about it, and we're going to report anything we see because it's comfortable to do so.
Wow. Well,
the exact word I was going to say. Wow.
I talk too much.
No. I think you've brought a whole new meaning to when you see something, say something. I mean, we've been saying it for years now, but you've taken it to a whole new level, which I think is absolutely important and a wonderful. What an eye opener this is! Don't you agree, Lori?
Absolutely. I mean, there's just so many good nuggets out of that. One thing I would like to mention is culture is not a single person's job. And I don't mean somebody single. I mean, it's not a department, and it's not, the head of culture. It's the whole environment. And the same thing with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not the job of one person to come in and just be the advocate, the spokesperson, and try to fix everything. It's everybody's job. So it does come from the top. You have to lead by example. And, one of you mentioned earlier, the manager is not always the expert. The people on the floor, the people on the boots on the ground doing the actual job, they're the experts on it. And so as leaders, we have to recognize our own blinders. We have to recognize we don't see everything, we don't know everything, and we need our employees to tell us. And if we're not getting that, then bringing in somebody from the outside does help, because there's a phrase called the law of familiarity. When we're too close to the situation, we don't see it. We can't analyze it. You need somebody, that third party, to come in and look at it and help. And you know what? They don't solve it for you. They bring it to your attention. Whatever it is, they bring it to your attention and give you guidance. So, so many good nuggets, Tracey. That was awesome.
I'd like to add to that. I think that, when there is a disaster, when there is a crisis, if you have open lines of communication in both directions, then the solution and the recovery from those disasters will be much faster. And it could be the difference between recovering and not recovering. So I think really this is, and then just knowing that you have employees that are able to contribute and are happy to contribute, and being accountable yourself. If you are not doing something, you need to fess up to the employees and say, hey, I made a mistake.
Right.
So that you keep those lines of communication open both ways. And I think my bottom line is just be a really good listener when you are, when somebody approaches you, and don't put your defenses up, just be open and willing to listen. So Lori, how can people reach out to you?
They can reach me through my website, namaziresources.com, or you can find me on social media.
Awesome. Tracey, You're easy to find. Just go ahead and tell us.
You can Google Tracey the Safety Lady, or you can find me. Safety and Security Source is my website, as well as my Facebook page. Tracey the Safety Lady is Instagram and Twitter. And can I say two more really quick things?
Absolutely.
Okay, two things that every business needs to be aware of, and I want to make sure I say them before we leave. Harassment. Think about sexual harassment. No company tolerates it, right? But we know for a fact that there are women or people who are being harassed on the job who will not speak up. So you're saying, how does that show itself? If that person doesn't feel comfortable going to leadership saying I'm being harassed, because first of all, what if they have a disciplinary problem or some kind of work problem and they're already on the ledge and they're edge and they're thinking I can't say anything. So they deal with the harassment, they internalize it. Guess what? That employee is either going to leave or they're going to be a drain on your EAP program. So then you need to make them feel comfortable if they're being harassed to address it, or else you're going to leave them. You're going to lose them, and then turnover. Lori, you mentioned that there's a cost to turnover. You're going to have to replace them, and the morale is low. Second one is bullying. And the way bullying shows itself, if you watch the news, you see all of these shootings and workplace violence. Bullying shows itself. And whenever they do that first round of interviews, they'll talk to employees and family members. And the first thing they say is, oh, we didn't expect this. We didn't see it coming. They were such a good person. Wait a few days or a week or so later, then they start doing the interviews. And then you hear people say, well, they weren't happy at work and they always complained about the boss. And, we watched their social media and they were saying things. So if you see someone who is being bullied at work, speak up, because those are the people who come back a lot of times to get revenge, and they're the ones who you see the workplace shooting. But I guarantee you, someone in that organization, in that business, heard a complaint, they saw something, they knew something, and they didn't feel comfortable speaking up. But after the fact, imagine the guilt that they're living with, that they could have prevented that. So harassment and bullying shows itself. You need to make people comfortable speaking up whenever they see signs of either one of those.
Man, and and unfortunately, we start seeing that as children in school, and it just continues on, and it doesn't really matter how old you are. You can experience either bullying or being bullied. So I think that's a really, really valuable point, because I think it's really important that everybody feels safe no matter what their environment is. And we're all feeling a little bit tense now. We're taking our masks off, and we're getting back in public again, and that gives you a little bit of an edge. But also the shootings that are happening now throughout are just enough to, do you feel safe going out? You know what I mean? So I think all of this is such critical, valuable information. Well, thank you, ladies. You can reach me, Coni Meyers, at Coni Meyers all over social media. Also, my website is CCAM Solutions Group. I have the Crisis Knowledge Management certification that helps you to prepare and helps others in your community be prepared for disasters and other crises. So, ladies, what a great conversation.
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. I'm glad you've become an expert, Tracey, because you just informed us.
Right. And Coni, I appreciate you. Every time I look up, you're doing interviews, you're putting content out there, writing books, creating programs. I appreciate you for starting the conversation and for being the conversation. Every time I turn around, there's Coni on my computer, but every time I learn something. So thank you for doing what you do.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Agreed.
All right, everybody. Well, we'll be back next month. Who knows what our topic will be then, but we'll figure it out in the meantime. So it'll all have something to do with either safety, risk, or crisis and disasters. We can promise you that. So, all right, everyone. Thanks, ladies. Thanks so much.
Be safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye, guys.